I was a pool director at Durham Pool at Flint College. They had just built a brand new YWCA in 1968, and they needed a male swim instructor.
And after school, I moved to Michigan and took a job at the YWCA. And I hired Joe to work for me. We met, and a year later we were married. He was fun.
Some of you using that job?
He's very friendly. He'll speak to anybody, and he makes friends easily, and they stay friends forever.
$5. We actually bought their house, and we've been friends ever since. And they were building a house just a short distance away. You know, became supper buddies.
We golf and we fish and eat. Just a real people person, real easy to get along with, and just loves to have people around. We've been fishing together ever since we moved here, and we've got a boat together, and Joe loves to go. I mean, you say, let's go fishing tomorrow, I'm ready to go.
He started shaking a little bit, and it was 7 to 8 years ago.
The first time I ever noticed it, we were actually working on his boat. We were at a friend's house, and they was changing the batteries, and he was laying down at the bottom of the boat. And boy, that leg just went scratching like a dog, kind of, you know, what's wrong with you? He said, I don't know.
He was having a hard time getting a plate, getting it to, spoon, fork to his mouth and so forth.
A friend of ours at church had just gotten Parkinson's, and he insisted that we come and see Dr. Deese.
Whenever you're meeting that patient for the first time with Parkinson's, you're going to take a look at how all of them moves, not just the hands, but how all of it gets put together. So for example, watch them walk down the room. If I got one thing I get to do with a patient, I want to watch them walk down a room because it combines all of the movements together. I first met Joe a couple years ago. It was clear that he had Parkinson's disease, and it was clear that he'd be a pretty good candidate for deep brain stimulation.
We weren't in there 15 minutes, and he said, you have classic Parkinson's. It was scary. We just thought, well, we have a good doctor, and we'll deal with it.
Parkinson's is a problem where the brain doesn't make enough dopamine, and dopamine is the neurotransmitter of movement. And so as Parkinson's is progressing over time, the brain's slowly making less dopamine over time. And then basically you use more medicines to make up the difference. And one of the medicines that we use is a medicine called Cinemet, which is carbidopa-levodopa. And that gets converted directly into dopamine. So you're just replacing the dopamine that should be there with a medicine that gets turned directly into dopamine. You're going to start getting wearing off from one dose to the next dose as the Parkinson's is continuing to progress over time. Because you're losing your ability to make that remaining dopamine that you have left, and then you become reliant more on the pill form of dopamine. 75% of all patients with Parkinson's will get a tremor. That tells you 25% don't, so you can absolutely have Parkinson's and not have a tremor, and that surprises a lot of people. But the tremor typically is the thing that bothers the patient the most, particularly if it's a really bad tremor. And the tremor is also the most difficult thing to control with medicines. When a patient walks in with a lot of tremor, particularly in their hand, you're kind of starting to think, hey, things like deep brain stimulation could be a really good choice here. Parkinson's slowly progresses over like 25 years. And I believe he was maybe 6, 7 years into this Parkinson's journey. By then, you've seen enough to be able to see, okay, well, there's the tremor there. I know that with that amount of tremor, if the expectation is that I'm going to make all of that tremor go away, then I'm not going to be able to do it with medicines. So then, hey, let's talk about some other options that we can do for that tremor. Because things like deep brain stimulation are absolutely excellent at tremor in Parkinson's disease.
We received a referral from our neurologist, Dr. Deese, who had a patient that had Parkinson's disease, and sometimes in the course of their management, they're not responding to their medications the way that they once were. And if they're interested in deep brain, he will do a referral to neurosurgery, and they'll come over, and Dr. Martino will then evaluate that patient to see if they're a good surgical candidate for DBS.
The criteria for performing deep brain stimulation is that they need to have failed medical management for at least 4 years prior to considering that as a treatment option. It essentially stimulates areas of the brain that block the signals for the tremors that patients have. The tremors can be quite debilitating, and it affects their daily life. So difficulty handling things, not able to grasp things, eating becomes a significant challenge, not just routine things, but also their ability to function. You know, people who like to go fishing can't go fishing anymore. People who go hunting, and deep brain stimulation allows them to do those various tasks and hobbies that they have that they weren't able to do beforehand. I think the key thing to understand from our perspective is that this is not a treatment for Parkinson's, it's a treatment for tremor as a result of Parkinson's. So it can help the motor symptoms, of Parkinson's.
And I think that's what a lot of the patients really yearn for, is to be able to do things that they used to do and to have more spontaneity with their family and, just enjoy life more fully. I think that this surgery really can do that for people.
Well, I didn't know anything about it really, but I thought, well, if I'm a good candidate, if they think I can get it done, I'll get it done. No, really, I was okay with it. I kind of put everything in the hands of the Lord, that here we go, let's get it done.
Dr. Martino is very calm, and he doesn't really get nervous. And so we just accepted the fact that he's going to do this surgery and it's going to be okay.
Maybe all the shaking will stop when we get this done.
On the day of putting in the deep brain stimulation lead, this is absolutely a team effort. So you need the neurosurgeon, which that day was Dr. Martino. You need the neurophysiologist, which is Dr. Darbin. I'm there also, so you've got the whole team there doing it. It's always an interesting day whenever you're in the operating room. But I remember the OR that day, things went really well, really smooth. What's interesting about this type of surgery is that the patient is awake for a portion of it. And you don't get to see that too many times, to be able to interact with the patient as we're doing the thing.
The initial part is making an incision and then placing a burr hole or hole within the skull that's approximately 14 millimeters in diameter. We set up first an array that gets attached to the skull, and that's our navigation tool. There's light emitting diodes that get read by our navigation devices. By manipulating our device, we can match up our target that we've chosen on our MRI scan to where it needs to be on the skull. We map out initially where we want the target to be before surgery. We line everything up afterwards with our navigation tools, so we're going straight down that target line that we had mapped out beforehand. Then we pass first some microelectrodes that are very thin wires that we can record, so we can hear the neurons, and each area of the brain that we traverse will have characteristic sounds. They also will have characteristic signals that we'll look at on the computer screen as well. We'll test on the patient to see if we're in the right area. Then we'll pass the electrode that is the one that will be permanently implanted. When we connect that to our stimulation, we will test for tremor, and we can lock that lead that we have to the skull and remove all our navigation devices, and then we tuck that electrode under the skin and park it behind the ear. Close everything up, and then we're done. During the first week, they will have what is frequently referred to as a honeymoon period, where there's reasonable resolution of the tremor. That's usually just temporary. The permanent solution really occurs after we put the battery in a week later, and then we wait for the edema, the swelling to subside, and a month later it gets turned on by Dr. Dees.
The first time you turn on the DBS electrode in the outpatient clinic, that's always another interesting day, right? So you're running through these different settings to see, hey, this is what we can actually get out of this thing. And then you're going to take that information to combine it into a combined game plan for how you want to go do the final setting with it. Joe did absolutely fantastic after we did the surgery. And first-time DBS program and understanding how all of this kind of fits in together. And to compare before and after, just from a straight-up tremor standpoint or bradykinesia rigidity standpoint, that's one thing for me to think about, but really the best person to answer that question is Joe.
It stopped my hands from shaking pretty quick. They did explain to me it wouldn't have any effect on your legs, though, that your legs would probably start shaking some sooner or later.
The last year, this past year, was when it got the worst.
Before his last surgery, to me, in my observation of him, he was really having a problem eating soup or trying to even drink water sometime.
So then I had the second surgery done because I was, I guess I was shaking a little bit more, and I went in and they decided they wanted to do the second one.
Parkinson's disease will start on one side, and then it will slowly progress to the other side over time. And that first side, whichever side that was, is always going to be a little bit worse. So with him, he'd done the first side, things had gone really well with it, and then his Parkinson's had progressed enough so that his second side was getting to be a problem, and he wanted to do the DBS on that side too. I would put our deep brain stimulation patients up against any program in the country. As far as outcome measures, how things have gone, it's something I'm very proud of.
If they've got to travel 3 to 4 hours to up north or east or west of here, that's very difficult to do. They're a challenge to mobilize. Their families have to take them to a facility that's 4 or 5 hours away. That can be, a challenge as well. They have to stay in a hotel while that's being done. So I think it's, as long as we can do it well, and I think we do, I think that, it's important to try to do it locally. It's just easier on patients and family.
Our job is to make the doctor's job easier. From a clinic setting, we manage patients in the hospital, we manage patients post-operatively, we help with the surgical procedures. We try to do as much as we can to allow them the time to really focus on surgical planning and operations and post-operative care.
When you get a patient like Joe, and who's had an excellent response with DBS, there's a lot of reasons why you sign up to go do the job. There's a lot of reasons why you did all the education to be able to go do the job, and this is one of them. It makes you think that what I'm doing makes a difference, and if what you're doing doesn't make a difference, then go find something else to do, because life's too short to do anything else.
I take a lot of pride in what I do, and it really warms my heart to see these families and the patient find a new chapter in their life.
Hey there.
Hi, Dr. Medino.
How we doing?
Doing great.
You doing good? He really gained a significant amount of activity or ability to do things. He was very anxious to get back out fishing. I remember that specifically. He's had a great result. At this point in time, I think everything looks great.
Well, I try to do everything as normal as I can, and I didn't quit doing anything in particular, other than, like I mentioned, my golf game kind of sucks now, but I still fish and I do hunting, so that hasn't really changed.
I'm just glad to see that he's capable and able to still do the things he loves to do. Gosh, I'm be glad I can even go at 77 and keep up with him.
Even though he's faced all this, he still comes at you with a smile on his face and a great attitude.
I just kind of look at things as what it's going to be is going to be, and just go along with whatever you can do.
Life's much better. As far as living day to day, we're happy. Thank you very much for your care, for being so helpful.
They do a great job here. What can you say to them other than you did a great job and thanks?